So let's go over some typical Keynesian multiplier questions that you might get on a quiz or an exam. Here, let's look at question number one. Question number one, we are given that the MPC is 0.8. So the MPC is 0.8. That means the marginal propensity to consume is 0.8. What that really means is that if people were to get an additional $100 in income, maybe because the government is spending more money, then they would spend 80% of that money and they would save 20% of it. Also, we know that government spending will increase by $40 billion. And the question then is, how much will GDP change by? At this point, you can pause the video and see if you can figure out the answer on your own, and then we'll go over the solution. So, in order to solve this problem, we first have to realize that the equation to help solve this problem is that the change in government spending, change, by the way, is, I'm abbreviating it with the Greek sign delta, Greek letter delta. So the change in government spending times what's called the multiplier is equal to the change in overall GDP. Well, the change in government spending is given here. We know that it's 40. We have to multiply that by the multiplier. Now, we don't see a multiplier here anywhere. However, we do know that the MPC is 0.8. And if we know the MPC, we can figure out the multiplier. The formula for the multiplier is that the multiplier is 1 divided by 1 minus the MPC, which is equal to 1 divided by 1 minus 0.8, which is equal to 1 divided by 0.2. 20 cents goes into $1 5 times, so this is equal to 5. So now we know that the multiplier is 5, and that will give us our answer. 5 times 40 is 200. Officially, it's 200 billion. These are billions. So we have the answer to our problem. The GDP in this Keynesian model will increase by $200 billion. Let's take a look at another problem, problem number 2. Here we know that the MPC is 0.75, so a slightly different MPC. And we also know that the government lowers taxes by $60 billion. Question is, how much will GDP change by? To answer this question, we have to know another equation. It's very similar to the one from question 1. But for this one, we know that the change in taxes times what's called the tax multiplier is equal to the overall change in GDP, according to the Keynesian model. The change in taxes is minus 60 because the government lowers taxes, so it's going to be minus 60, so minus $60 billion officially. And we multiply that by what is called the tax multiplier. Now, how do you get the tax multiplier? In order to get the tax multiplier, we first have to calculate the regular multiplier, and that's the same formula as we used in question 1. So it's 1 divided by 1 minus the MPC, which is 1 divided by 1 minus MPC here in this problem is given at 0.75. So that is equal to 1 divided by 1 minus 0.75 is 0.25. And 1 divided by 0.25, 25 cents goes into $1 4 times. Now that's not it yet, because that's a regular multiplier. The tax multiplier is a little bit different. Tax multiplier is actually 1 minus the regular multiplier. So 1 minus 4. 1 minus 4 is minus 3. So we're going to put minus 3 here. And so we have minus 60 times minus 3 is plus $180 billion. So as a result of the government lowering taxes by $60 billion, the GDP in the economy will increase by $180 billion according to the Keynesian model. Let's look at question 3. In question 3, we know that the MPC is 0.9. We also know that the government lowers its spending by $50 billion. And another thing the government does is it lowers its taxes by $50 billion. The question is, by how much will GDP change? Feel free to pause the video at this point to try to figure out the answer to this problem. So here we go. The MPC is 0.9. First of all, since we're dealing with a change in spending and then also we're dealing with a change in taxes, let's figure out the multiplier first. So the multiplier, as you know, the regular multiplier, is 1 divided by 1 minus 0.9. 1 minus 0.9, that's 1 divided by 0.1, which is equal to 10. 10 cents goes into $1 10 times. If we know that the regular multiplier is 10, and we know that the tax multiplier is 1 minus 10, or minus 9, then we can say that that is the tax multiplier. Tax multiplier is minus 9. Okay, so we got that. And then we use the equations that we used in questions 1 and 2. In question 1, there was something about spending changes, and we said that the change in government spending, in this case there is a lowering of government spending, so the change in government spending minus 50 times the regular multiplier is 10, gives us a change in GDP of minus $500 billion. So as a result of the first change, this one, government lowers spending by 50, we have a decrease in GDP of $500 billion. Second part, government lowers taxes by $50 billion. There we had the change in taxes. There's also a lowering of taxes, so minus 50. Now times the tax multiplier. Tax multiplier is minus 9. That gives us plus $450 billion. So as a result of a lowering of taxes by $50 billion, we have an increase in GDP of $450 billion. If you combine these two, we will notice that GDP will go down by $50 billion. Minus 500 plus 450. Minus $50 billion. Minus 50, by the way, is the exact same amount that we used in when we said we're going to lower government spending by $50 billion and we're going to lower taxes by $50 billion. So that's the exact same amount. Keynes actually said that if a government lowers spending and lowers taxes by the exact same amount, and GDP will actually change by that exact same amount, which is what we saw here in this problem. He said that the balanced budget multiplier, because in this case we're balancing our budget. Yes, we're lowering our taxes by 50, so that's going to be not so good for our budget. But we're also lowering spending by the same exact amount, so we're balancing our budget supposedly. And so the balanced budget multiplier is 1. In other words, 1 times that 50 gives us the answer of minus $50 billion. If the government had increased spending by, let's say, $30 billion, and if the government had increased spending by the same $30 billion, then we can say that because the balanced budget multiplier is 1, that GDP will then increase by $30 billion. So if the government changes spending and taxes by the exact same amount, then GDP will change by that exact same amount. Keep in mind that all of these problems are part of the Keynesian model, and the solutions are all part of the Keynesian model. The classical economists did not totally agree with the math and the math conclusions that Keynes came up with.